watch live. So we're going to start in a few minutes, but
Hi, everyone.
maybe while we hear any interesting stories from the lockdown, or I'm not sure if we want to do the introductions. I think most people know everybody, but maybe just quick name and the location just so we know. I don't know. David, you are first on my link.
Yeah.
So where are you located?
I don't know. I'm David Baker. I teach at University of Louisiana Lafayette. I think I've been in Culture for going on about 6 years now. No special stories for lockdown other than going stir crazy, living with my dog.
Yep.
But everybody's healthy here, luckily, because Louisiana was hit pretty hard.
Okay. Anna, you are the next on my screen. I'm not sure what order you are displayed in your. So
okay. I am Anna, Kazan National Research Technical University from Russia, and we are also on lockdown. But nothing interesting except the enormous amount of complaints from the students that they want to go back to the university.
Okay. Peter, you look refreshed. I mean, it looks like lockdown is actually, and you're smiling, which is a little unusual for you. So what's up?
Good morning, everyone. Peter Magnuson at the University of Alabama. We're doing okay.
Yeah, okay. All right, very nice to see you, Peter. Anshu?
Well, good morning, everyone. It's nice to be here today. Hi, Peter. Hi, David. Hi, Blamir. Hi, Vas. Good to see you all. Good to see all the good faces today. Vas, I didn't get the invite, so I have been using Amit's invite. So thankfully, he got one, and he'll be joining us too. So good to have husband and wife together, right? Because one of us will definitely get the invite. Well, I'm from the University of the District of Columbia. And it's nice to be here. And I think Amit will be joining too. So you have two for the price of one.
Two for the price of one.
Everyone.
Yeah, I think my assistant who was preparing the list probably saw the same last name and they just basically
I think so too. Exactly.
Or we still have your Savannah or Pennsylvania email on the list, which is possible too. I need to check for that. So.
But don't worry, we'll never miss it. I know one of us will always get an invite. So thanks for that.
Good to see you all. Yes. Joseph, where are you located?
Yes, you know, I have always two locations, but today I am in Budapest.
Budapest, okay.
And I am teaching at the University Szent István. This year I had only one student involved into the Culture program, but I am with the program since 8 years.
Yeah. Pretty much from the very beginning, so maybe even 9 years because we are 10.
9 years, you are right, 9 years.
It could be even 9 years, yeah.
9 years. Thank you, Vas. Yeah. It is a good program.
Now more and more people are coming, so hopefully we'll have enough time for the introductions. Let's maybe go quickly. So Natalia is the next one.
Hi, I'm Natalia. I've been with Culture for 5-6 years, I think now. Yeah. And I am located at Cal State Long Beach. So the same story here, lots of students, emails, complaints about not being able to attend university, but luckily Culture was not hurt in any way because we were anyway virtual and online.
Right, yeah. Nice Greg, to meet you all. Very nice to meet you. And that's for you like 8 a.m. now, so that's quite a, one thing I will say, Natalia's children participated in Culture Kids program last year. And so we had all those meetings like at 9 a.m. And so they had to wake up at 6 a.m. And they actually did. And sometimes they were in the meetings like in pajamas and everything, but dedication.
That was a great experience. They loved it.
Yeah, so very nice. Greg, what is your location?
Yes, hi, my name is Gregory Kivenzer. I'm at the University of Connecticut in Stamford, Connecticut, very close to the epicenter of New York, but fortunately, the pandemic cases are coming down in Stamford as of the last week or so. And I would say that I'm a veteran of Culture program because my students started to participate in it in March. So this is my comprehensive experience. And it was very fortunate that we scheduled it this way because right before the closure, my students, I held midterms, and my students in the classroom presented their views of the future project. And then everything went online. And it was a very interesting experience. And my students did not complain that they wanted to go back to campus. And the X-Culture experience was very successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, before we continue on with the introductions, there is a very important comment from Leilani Baumanis, and I need to ask it now before we forget. So next Friday, exactly a week from now, we have a global X-Culture Symposium, but this time it will be virtual. So as you know, we do it twice a year, face-to-face. We had one in San Antonio, Texas in November. Before that, we had one in Canada. Before that, it was Nashville, Tennessee. Before that, it was Italy. So we basically have them twice a year. And this year, the plan was to have it in Singapore, but unfortunately, it had to be rescheduled. So obviously, we cannot do it this summer due to the COVID-19. And then at the same time, we were planning some other things. So Leilani found one interesting speaker with a really cool title. What is it? Google Education Evangelist.
No, now you got me all screwed up. Chief Educational Evangelist, but he's really the Chief Education,
well,
I don't know what evangelist, but
he has Google and evangelist in his title, which sounded cool. And Leilani calls me and says, let's do a webinar with him. And I'm like, okay, sure, let's do a webinar. But then, well, if we do Google, maybe we should invite somebody else. How about we invite Hard Rock International and see what they, have to say? Okay, well, let's do that. And then somehow in a matter of like 2-3 days, it went from one speaker to like 4 speakers. And then we said, well, if we do 4 speakers, maybe we should do like a full-scale symposium. And before we know it, now we have like 12 people organizing this event. And it's been like several weeks and multiple phone calls. But anyway, for one of the sessions there, we would like to have little short videos from professors and students talking about their X-Culture experience. So basically things you would like to say on the 10-year University of X-Culture, not university, anniversary. And so if it would be possible, if you are available, if you are you're able, I will send the link to everybody where you can upload those videos. And if you can literally just take your phone and say a few words in your phone and then share that file either directly in the link that I will send you or put it to like Dropbox or Google Docs and send the link to me. So, and we will then just combine them together. We want only like 30 seconds, right, Leilani? Like we don't need much. Just 30 seconds, like a quick, hi, my name is Alex, and here is what I have to say about X-Culture, 30 seconds. And we'll just put them together and have like a 5-10 minute video maybe that we will show during the lunch break. So before I forget. Mm-hmm. Now let me see if we have a few more people. So let's do very quick introductions for the rest of the people so we know what locations we have here. Just maybe name the university and the state or country where you are. So Vladimir, what's your location? And then Sandra would be next.
Hi, good morning. Vladimir Xavier, Biola University, Los Angeles metropolitan area, California. Nice to see you all.
Nice to see you. And then Sandra, where are you located?
Hi, everyone. I'm at St. Petersburg, Florida, Eckerd College.
Very nice. Then I see Alejandra Tenorio.
Hi, everyone. I'm from Mexico City. I'm at Universidad Panamericana, and this was my first time participating in X-Culture. It was an amazing project. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Alejandra. Ana Maria.
Hi, everyone. I'm based in Portugal, the University of Minho.
Very nice to see you. Ernesto, we are migrating from one meeting to another. We just had one.
Yes. Ernesto Tavoletti, University of Macerata, Italy.
Yeah, Ernesto was the host for the last meeting in Italy 2 summers ago. Jennifer?
For Lee, I'm coming from Rochester, New York, and I'm at Nazareth College.
So you're in New York, right? So
we are in New York State. We are, quite a distance from New York City, but feel quite a affinity as a state and think daily of the challenges that we face, but are healthy here. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Gordon was supposed to be or will be in the future the host of the symposium in Singapore. And again, all kinds of things got messed up a little bit here. So Gordon, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get the mic. Oh, I'm on?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sitting by, as you can see, by Marina Bay in Singapore. And I'm a prof at Singapore Management University.
One thing also you might want to take a look at, Gordon is preparing a series of sort of educational videos for X-Culture students. And he already prepared a trailer that I shared on the X-Culture's Facebook page and my own page. And then there is now the first kind of introduction video, which is about 20 minutes. But the way it's done—
Not for release yet. It's still draft.
Well, okay, but the trailer is available, and so
the trailer is available. Yeah.
He calls it the X-Culture Matrix series, and so the whole kind of message is that the university is not real life; it's only a simulation. So if you want to get, really understand how the real business works, sort of, here is what I have to share. So take the red pill, and something that again maybe other professors will want to create in the future as well. So interesting initiative. So looking forward to that. Now we have Julia here. Julia, most of you may not know her. So she is the new administrative assistant replacing Simone. So Simone graduated a couple of weeks ago. He's been with us for like 5 or 6 years. And so of all the people, unfortunately, we couldn't keep him because he has a family business and his father expects him to take over from him. So, so Simone had to leave. But now Julia has been working with us for a few months, learning from Simone and basically now managing all of the correspondence and much more. So just tell us maybe a couple of words so that people know who you are.
Hello, everybody. My name is Julia. I'm from Ukraine, and now I'm in Ukraine. I'm very happy to be in a such team like Culture. It's a very big challenge for me to cover all that covers Simone, but I think I will make success in this.
Yeah, it's a lot to learn, but she's doing very well. And for me, for the first time in my life, for the last couple of months, I wake up and my email is actually manageable. So normally we get about 100+ emails per day. And during the semester, it's more like 200 emails per day. And Julia clears most of that up. So I would have like a nice 20, 30 messages to attend to, which is totally doable. So big challenge, big change. Leilani and then Deborah.
So hello, everybody. I am at Johnson & Wales University in Miami, and I'm really glad to be a part of this group.
Thank you, Leilani. Deborah DeLong.
Hi, I'm Debbie DeLong. I am in Pittsburgh at Chatham University, and this is also my first time doing X-Culture, and it was a great experience.
Thank you very much. Karen, I will do the introduction. I know Karen is busy, or are you able to talk, Karen? Go ahead.
Yeah,
then.
can you hear me all right?
Yes.
I'm on the go. Okay, great. This is Karen Linden, and I am at UNCG with Voss. I'm a lecturer, and I've been involved with X-Culture for a few years now. And like Leilani said, it's just an incredible experience, and I'm glad to be here.
Very nice, yes. Michael, are you able to speak? And then Justin, Alfredo, Tim, I don't see your pictures, Arkadiusz. So Michael is in Texas, Justin Kramer is in Thailand, Alfredo is probably in France. He's originally from Spain, but he's always, oh, okay, Justin is here. Justin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sorry, I didn't notice my video wasn't on.
Yeah.
So I'm Justin, I'm a Canadian. I did my education in the States, but now I'm working in Mae Fai Lung University in Thailand. But because of COVID-19, I've actually relocated to a university of Payao, which is about 2 hours away. So I'm sort of trapped. I can't go back, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, and Justin helps a lot on the research front with the data preparation, data process, and analysis. So if you need a researcher to help with your projects, Justin would be the man to go. All right, let's do very quickly. So I see also one more person with the video, so let's do one more presentation. Ricardo, can you introduce yourself? And then Alfredo, I see his video too, and then we'll go to business.
Hi, I'm Ricardo. I teach marketing. I'm in Caracas, Venezuela. I work at IESA, which is a business school in Venezuela.
Very nice to see you. I know your students had a lot of difficulties joining X-Culture, especially last semester. There were problems with electricity and the internet. So it was quite a dedication again on their part trying to go online.
Even though they're delighted with the experience.
Yes. Well, that's what I mean. So, you know, my students sometimes complain that it's too hard, too much, and they have everything right here available, all the resources. Students from Venezuela, especially again last semester, for them it was like a real heroic effort, to stay online, and they did, and they still did. So that was quite impressive.
Yeah.
Alfredo, so where are you located? French wine or Italian or Spanish wine this time?
No, I'm still in France. I'm Alfredo. I work at Catch Business School in southwest of France. I've participated many times in X-Culture, but unfortunately, it has been a few years I don't do it because where I work, the schedule, how I teach is very concentrated in just specific weekends or a week, and that doesn't fit. But I'm still, as Basil knows, I'm very attached to the project and also in the research side. So I'm glad to be still part of it.
Very nice. And Reese,
sorry, guys, I think I was.
Oh, Michael, go ahead.
Apologize. I was muted. I apologize. I was just sharing with the team how much we appreciate your leadership. So, Wes, thank you for leading this effort, and we're looking forward to making this another successful symposium.
Thank you so much, Michael. And Reese, where are you located? You should be the one with the beach in the background, right?
Well, yeah, I should be, but unfortunately, I'm in a mountain. I'm still on the island because we still have actually a curfew every day. So we're not even allowed on campus.
Yeah, Reese is in Grenada and has probably the most beautiful campus, like picture perfect, palm trees, blue ocean, so very beautiful. So there are a bunch of questions that we would like to discuss and get your input. And with so many of us, I'm not sure if it will be possible for everybody to share your input. Let's see how many of us can talk. But importantly, I will send you a follow-up survey with all of the questions one more time. And if there will be something that you have some ideas that maybe you'll have later, or maybe something that you didn't have time to say during the meeting, please do share those comments and input in that survey. And obviously, hopefully we'll be able to have some discussion during the meeting. And the first question I have for you is if you have any suggestions for scheduling the events, scheduling the X-Culture program for the next semester. The challenge we have is that nobody knows what the schedule will look like at the universities. Like my school apparently wants to go with a shorter semester, so they want to stop sooner than usual, and that means that the normal schedule doesn't work for us. And then also, I'm not sure how they're going to manage it at other universities. So if the schedule is already set, if it's going to be shorter semester, if it's going to start late or finish early or anything else. And so I'm not sure how to approach it. I guess we can invite applications without specific dates for the semester and then decide on the dates once we have everybody's schedule. But maybe you have some words of wisdom for how to manage it for the full semester in these uncertain times. Any thoughts, any comments?
As of now, we are thinking here at Cal State Long Beach, we're thinking to do a normal semester with the only difference that we're going to do it online. So it's going to be the same 16th week, the late start as for X-Culture. We're starting at the end of August, ending in the mid-December. So far, it's a normal semester.
Maybe let me ask you.
For me in Singapore, exactly the same. Online, same schedule.
Maybe let me ask you this way. If your schedule is changing or you don't know what your schedule would be, can you maybe raise your hand so we at least get some idea? Like ours is different and Sandra is different, but everybody else is on the, and David. So, but everybody more or less, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe most people will be on the same schedule. Because normally we have the dates way in advance, but this time it looks like we may have to have a little bit more flexible schedule and then see how we adjust it.
Vaz, I would say that nobody knows what their schedule is really going to be in the fall until we understand how this is going to play out over the summer. I know my university has contingency plans that apparently involve 3 different scenarios, and you could guess what they are. One's hybrid, one's full-time, and the other is fully online. But they have not announced exactly what they're going to do, and probably won't, I guess, until sometime in July. So
yeah, for us, they allowed
the schedule change.
Was that Peter?
How will this get? Are they moving start and end dates?
So far, my university has not announced that, but I've read that a lot of others are looking to shorten it because they think that this will pick back up in November.
Yeah, I mean, I know Notre Dame came out and said that they're done by Thanksgiving.
Yeah, same thing with us.
you know, my.
So we have a U.S. phenomena. Like, do we just have a U.S. phenomena, and the rest of the world will be online and as normal? So it's mainly a U.S. phenomena because all the uncertainty and avoid Thanksgiving.
Well, Gordon, I suspect that Europe will have similar challenges. Same hemisphere, same weather issues. That the only reason I think they're trying to start it early or end the semester earlier is because of flu season starting, because of the colder weather happening, and Europe will have that just as much as the U.S. So that's true in the Southern Hemisphere, but I'm not sure about Europe. Somebody from Europe might be able to speak to that.
Well, I'll just say something about Washington, D.C. I mean, we get so much conflicting things here, federal saying something, the state or the mayor is saying something else. So we don't know what's happening at the moment because I think they're trying to protect the kids, even though the kids are not affected so much. And I'm talking about the teenagers and even the schools and even the colleges. So we don't know what we're going into because again, we are still not open. I know a lot of states are open, but DC is still not open. The mayor is trying to make sure that the citizens are as much protected as they can. But again, the mental health is also an issue. And I mean, it could be a hybrid semester for us. It could be a full semester. It could be an online. So we're still not sure at the moment.
I'm sure, Namit. I think you're like getting good acclimated to Washington, D.C. And
oh my God, there's so much.
There's a rule in
so
D.C.
much conflicting views here. And everyone is so political. I mean, even a normal citizen in Washington, D.C. will say something about either for or against it. So I think in DC, we have a completely different picture. I know we are not following any state. I mean, we don't know what we are following. We're not even following the federal government. So we are completely on our own right now. But yeah, the mayor, I think, has taken some wonderful steps. So I would definitely say that we are highly protected at the moment.
I think my guess is that I would like to introduce one idea which may be useful. In most cases, administrations of the universities consider the undergraduate program as much more static compared to the graduate programs. That is why it is quite possible that graduate programs could be delayed, especially because there are many students who may be traveling, who may apply, and let me just use the United States as one of the examples. They may be useful for European countries as well. Many students may not have enough time to get visas and to get into the country where their university is located. And that is why in many situations, administrations consider flexible schedule for graduate courses to a much greater degree than that for the undergrads. So we may think about the undergraduate program, which is more, I would not say carved in stone, but which will more closely follow the common pattern. And graduate programs may be shifting here and there, and they may be completely taken online. But in this case, if they are online, then it doesn't matter for the purpose of the scheduling. It is just my observation and some understanding from the comments which I heard from different angles or from different places.
If I can say something from old Europe, I agree with Gordon that this discussion about delay is a very USA actually discussion. Because in the USA there is this hope that everything will be fine very soon, so we just have to delay. We had something similar in Italy. So we have been delaying the starting of the second semester or thinking about, but then it is very clear that this is going on. So for example, we have been reading on the news that Cambridge, UK made the declaration that everything will be online till summer 2021. And so we expect that many big players are going in that direction. So maybe this is good news for X-Culture. I do not expect so changing in the date of semesters in Europe, but I expect, of course, a lot of universities going completely online. And so I think X-Culture is actually an asset in that sense.
Yeah, and I see some good suggestions from Gordon, from Sandra, from David. Maybe, yes, it looks like the early track probably will be okay. Late track, maybe we just move it up a little bit, maybe shorten by a week. But I think in the announcement, I will also make sure to stress that the dates for now are tentative. And we will, once we know everybody's schedule, we will then adjust as needed, maybe make it shorter or maybe longer or whatever needed. So, but anyway, if any additional ideas come along, please do let us know. Another issue that is a little new that came up in the conversation with Ernesto, actually, but also I talked to a few other professors, and there seems to be no single sort of requirement, agreement or opinion on the issue. Ernesto, I think it was you who mentioned that some of the students complained that some of their teammates were not fluent enough in English. And my apology if it was somebody else, but I think it was Ernesto, but doesn't matter.
Yes, it is me, it is me,
yeah.
Yes.
And so one of the issues or one of the discussions we've been having lately, and again, with different people, I think we had also something going on with Gordon and Tim and Leilani and Karen, so selectivity. So at this time, when it comes to language, we do have several sort of tests that we give students. One, obviously, we expect the professors to check the quality or fluency of students' English. And if the professor feels they're not ready, then not enroll them. Then there is a self-declared proficiency in English in the readiness test. Then we actually have a test of English, similar to TOEFL, just much smaller. And usually we go with about 80% or higher on the test. Like if the student says out of 10, I give myself 8, we are happy. If it's lower, we get nervous and then look at everything else. And if it's like less than 7, we say, no, not good enough. Same thing with the little TOEFL that we do. Again, I expect 80% of the questions to be answered correctly. But then obviously, again, sometimes professors don't do their job very diligently when it comes to filtering out the students who are not fluent. Sometimes people misrepresent their own language fluency. The online test, I think it is timed, but still, manipulatable. So people can ask a friend to help. People can look up the answers on the internet, or use dictionary. So there are ways to sort of game the system. I think the most important criterion could be actually the readiness test itself. It has about 100 questions. It's all in English. And if you cannot speak English, you will not be able to answer those questions. And if you can answer them, presumably you can understand enough, to communicate. But one of the concerns was that maybe it's still not enough. And I suppose we can expand that question not only to English, but also to other skills and other selection criteria. So diligence, personality, professionalism, skills, and all those kinds of things. And so the dilemma here is, or the trade-off is, on the one hand, yes, we want it to be more selective, but then the problem may be that maybe some good students will be excluded just because they're not as fluent as we want them to be. And maybe they still would have done well because they're willing to work harder, for example, to compensate for that. Likewise, some things may not be predictable, like how do we know who's going to be plagiarizing down the road, or how do we know who's going to be missing meetings? We have some sort of indicators that we pay attention to, but again, it's never a perfect predictor. And then another argument could be that X-Culture is a preview essentially of what's in store for you in the future. And the truth is that in the real world, in real business and real corporate teams, there will be some employees perhaps who will not be diligent enough and will miss the meetings or will not do their work, share of work. There will be maybe some international partners who will not be fluent in English. There may be some people who will plagiarize or steal your business ideas. And so just like now we see a plagiarism rate higher in some countries, those tend to be the countries where the copyright is not very respected. And so in a sense, if we were even able to weed out all those problematic participants, it will make the experience of the students who kind of make it perhaps more pleasant or more enjoyable or more easy, but maybe more distant from the real life. And so the question is, one, do we need to raise the stakes, like maybe raise the test scores, not 80, but 85 or 90, to pass? Second, do we need to add any other tests? And three, well, maybe we should keep it as it is, because again, when I look, for example, at English, I actually looked for the last semester, we asked at the beginning, to what extent do you think each of these will be a problem? And then language proficiency is one of them. And at the end, we asked them to what extent this was a problem. And for that matter are not on the top of the list. So people kind of say, most people say it's not a problem at all. It's like on a 7-point scale, it's like 2.1. So essentially they say it was not a problem at all. And then there would be a few people who said it was a problem, but it's like a very, very small, tiny percentage. So it seems like it's not an overarching big problem. But then again, even if we could eliminate them, would that do, good or bad? It may improve the experience of the students, but will they get a, rosy picture that is far from the real, experience in the real world? So what's your what's your opinion here on the selectivity, and, what do we need to do to select students? Do we need to raise the test scores that we want to see, or anything else we need to do to ensure the quality, while also keeping this kind of true representation of the world as part of the project? What are your thoughts?
Just a few seconds, if I can, Vas.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
As you can see, I am not a native speaker, and my English is far from perfect. But actually, I think that we have actually a serious concern with a few students, and maybe this is actually ruining the experience of the most performing ones. So I think we should do something, not a revolution, but actually just maybe demanding, as we were suggesting, 85 instead of what we are demanding right now. So just doing some more selective, being some more selective, and let's see what is going to happen. And because now we are a big communities, we have so many students, so asking something more might be actually a good time to do so, to improve the experience of others.
And are you talking about English only, or do you think we should also be more strict with other tests?
I think the English and even the readiness test, because if the student is not reading the handbook and doesn't know what X-Culture is about, it should not be admitted, actually, because otherwise, but English is actually, yes, there were some students that actually didn't have an English that was good enough to interact properly with my students, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any
other thoughts on that? Yeah, Anna?
As I'm coming again from the environment where English is not the native speaking, my concern is with being more selective with English, is that we are going to lose the internationality in the teams. I mean, no matter how good we educate people, they will still not be fluent enough to understand slang or something like this. And I don't know what was exactly the problem, but even if we raise the test score, and if X-Culture is obligatory, for instance, my students are capable of overcoming the tests, the entry tests. So in any case, those people can be excluded from the team. It means if they are not fluent enough, they're not doing the share of work. So just exclude them, and that's it. It's part of the life. And actually, when I was doing academic writing course, which was by edX, there was a huge fight between English native speakers and American native speakers who speaks the right English. So if we go this way, I think we're going to just finish up with just native speakers, and that's it.
I agree with Anna on this, Vas. I think just a working knowledge of English would be fine. I'm sure my French colleagues would agree with this, why this focus on English anyway.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, if we look at the real life scenario in the business world, you have people from all over the world working in multinational corporations. And some have good English speaking skills, some do not. But then it's all about the work ethics. If the person is doing the job, that should not preclude that person from participating in X-Culture. So,
and that diligence part, that's where people say that was a challenge. So it seems like, not trying is a much bigger problem than not knowing how to, or, the fluency. And that free writing issue.
For my students, it wasn't so much that they weren't, students with better or worse English, it's not that they weren't willing to participate on the team. It really came down to the writing quality. And I had some of my students felt like they had to rewrite other students' work just continuously, and it interfered with the quality of their experience. So I don't necessarily think that it was as much about verbally, the team meetings, verbally being able to participate. It was like the finished product that really suffered.
Well, one of the challenges with that is that we consistently, it's in the training, and we say that every time, that the better approach here would be to divide the workload not by the report section, but by the function. So if the native speaker is on the team, maybe that person should do most of the writing, whereas others should do more like research and, prepare the draft. So basically, divided by the functional area and not by the question in the report. But then again, for students, obviously, it's more convenient to go, you do question 1, you do question 2, and then some of those sections, yeah. So, but again,
I like that idea, Vas. I think by function as opposed to.
Oh, we say, yeah, I like that idea too. And as I said, it's in every single training module for like 5 years now. But the problem is that students are still stuck in this, paradigm that, let's do it as efficiently as possible. And Michael will do marketing, and Deborah will do HR, and I will do the country analysis, and then we'll just copy and paste everything in one document. And basically,
eventually it all comes to team dynamics and free writing problem. And I'm just preparing my students. I'm just telling them that it's an internship for you. It's a life preparation. You'll go to work in virtual teams, and it's going to be the same. Even though you're in a working environment, you'll see people who would not be willing to do their job. And as a native speaker, you should be prepared to do editorial part. You should be prepared to work with people who are not maybe as, eloquent and as prepared to speak English. So it's all like, I'm just like emphasizing this aspect of experiencing the real world environment and be prepared to handle team dynamics.
Yeah. I agree with Natalia's approach, and I would say that we need to prepare students for the challenges. One of the things which I found, and in this case, I want to say that Ernesto's earlier comment that that might not be a problem per se, but it ruins or affects, negatively affects student overall experience. Especially when for example, I had students who needed to work on 5 different courses, and all of a sudden they found that instead of their planned workload, they had to do twice as much work compared to the expectations. And they complain, and they feel that people who did not contribute to the final reports, which is a major load, were freeloaders, more or less. I understand that these people might be contributors in other parts, but what counts is the end product, the end result. For this purpose, maybe we need to discuss one potential part of the preparation. I keep telling my students that they need to be prepared to be leaders. And as leaders, they have to be able to understand the whole picture, distribute tasks, and then sort of look at the different parts which evolve in parallel. And this crown of leadership helps them understand that leaders have to do more. Leaders have to take care of multiple parts, not just for the narrowly assigned question number 2 or number 3. And this helps them understand that they're responsible for the last part, the final product, which is the project report. In my classes, I also require that they present the project to the whole class. So each of them reports to the whole class, preparing a creative presentation depicting their solution. Some of the students work in competing teams. That is why it was very interesting to see different solutions for the same set of problems. And that was contributing to their overall experience from the project. But the emphasis on leadership, I believe, helps them for the mental setup that they need to do more, or they need to do more at different points in the project development.
Yeah, I actually do the same. My students also do a 5-7 minutes presentation after they submit their project and share their results, and that exposes them to different approaches, you know, creativity and everything. And actually another thing that I do to prepare students to take a higher workload, I'm stating at the beginning of the X-Culture that they need to consider this project as to be prepared to take this project individually. So I'm telling them that it's an internship, it's an experience of virtual work and everything, but they need to be prepared to, they should not complain about someone not doing their part. They need to be prepared to do this project individually. It's a dynamics of my teaching international business. I'm teaching all international business classes in my university. So I do X-Culture at the last, like I do international business and international comparative management and international business strategy and policy is the class which is doing it, and it's kind of culmination of the international business studies within the university, even though many students take simultaneously classes and all of that. But I emphasize the fact that they need to be prepared to complete this project individually, incorporating the idea of team dynamics, free riding, but then also emphasizing their responsibility, leadership aspect, and many, many other things within this sort of environment.
I can say one thing, you know, I had my undergrad and grad classes that participated in X-Culture in the first semester, like the last semester, first early track. And 80% of my undergrad students are native speakers, and 80% of my MBA students are not native speakers. They were completely international. But I think the cultural experience that my MBA students got out of X-Culture was amazing. And I think the reason was they came from different cultures and they were able to contribute so much in X-Culture. I have a question here. So here is what was happening in my classes. A lot of it was on peer pressure and peer help, in the sense that I make sure that every week I'll tell them to talk about X-Culture and help each other. Like, what are you doing? What stage are you on? Are you moving ahead? Are you here? And they used to talk about the teams and the experience. Now, if we are looking at an online environment, I'm not sure how am I going to do that. So that's where I need, you know, yours, like any recommendations for those of you who have conducted it completely online. What do you do? Like, do you meet them every week, or you meet them every other week, or how does it work?
Anshu, let me ask a bigger question here. So one, apparently we have a lot of questions, but also a lot of ideas from professors how to do it. Like, for example, your question is, how do you do it online? Another, yes. You know, Greg was talking about how he manages it even in face-to-face. And so that leads me to the question, do you think we should provide a little bit more training or opportunities to share experiences or maybe mentorship among the professors? Because at this time we don't really train professors, and we don't really even have, like, there is a handbook for the professors, but should we maybe have some sort of additional, if not training, then at least a platform where professors can share their tricks and tips and, you know, advice with other professors, especially those who are participating for the first time maybe? Like, would that be necessary, helpful? And that leads to a very important question that I will ask in a minute, because that one is really big and I don't know how to answer it.
So first, my comment is that I am not sure that changing the requirements for the students from like 80 to 85%, that would be a nuanced enough test to have any effect at all. However, it does seem to me, from like years of experience, that like this semester, a lot of my students had teammates from Italy, did great, teammates from South America did great, and then there was one teammate from India, and then a very large percentage of the students' paper, it said, did not participate. So I think there are a few, I guess, clusters where there are problems, which maybe it's through training, or maybe it's through better data analysis or reporting. I think those problem areas could be identified, and maybe it is just better training, mandatory seminars, discussions, or whatever it may be, to kind of lift those few problem areas.
Let me ask a very big question here, because it's directly related. And Peter, we talked with you a little bit about that. We have a lot of discussions about this with Gordon, but it comes up over and over again. And the big question is sort of, how should I phrase it, more or less? And both more or less for students or more or less for professors. And let me explain what I mean by that. Some professors are very demanding and provide a lot of resources to their students, but expect a lot in exchange. So for example, if Gordon had his way, he would, and in fact, that's what he does with his students, and that's why they do so well. He provides a lot of, like additional training. He provides a lot of additional resources, but then he also expects only the top quality in terms of the performance. And then we have some other professors who believe that even what we expect of students now, it's already too much. I mean, they believe that even as it is, X-Culture requires more time than the rest of the course combined, and more than some of the courses, like, dedicated courses. And so the dilemma here is always, do we want to provide even more training and even more resources and expect even more, which I like as an intention, but then at the same time, I realize that the students already complain that it's too much work. Some professors complain that it's too much work. Some professors complain that the students complain to them that it's too much work. And the same thing goes for professors. Again, some professors sign up because they are willing to do more. They would like to give their students more. They're contributing a lot. Again, I mentioned a bunch of names here, people who develop training materials, people who organize the seminars, people who participate in webinars. But then also there are some professors who enroll and basically say, okay, here is the list of the students. I'm here because I know you will do all the work for me and I'll just sit and watch. And so do we need to then provide more or less? I mean, should we be in the business of making the life of professors easier, or should we expect more and demand more from them? And so the question is, how do we find this balance? Or do we have like a two-tier system where we say, this is the minimum required for everyone, but if you want more, we have these all additional textbooks and videos and training. Like, how do we find the balance between, what's the optimal amount of work and what's the kind of optimal amount of expectations in terms of the quality and the amount of work that people, students and professors invest?
Vas, you always ask such great questions, Vas. I love that question. Now, Vas, we've been taught that if you want more of achievement and peace of mind and money and academic success, we need to do more, to add more to our ever-growing to-do list. But what if we've been taught wrong? What if the answer to getting more of what we want isn't addition at all, but subtraction?
Vas, if I can add something here, I think our discussion on students should really be our discussion on professors. Because instead of making the students accountable, I guess we should make the professors accountable. Because somewhere, if the student is not doing what he or she is supposed to be doing, I think it comes in the professors. So I guess if my student is not doing something right, then it's my accountability. I need to be accountable for my student. That means I've not trained them enough. Maybe I've not given them the right tools to be successful in this kind of a program. So I think somewhere the accountability needs to be shifted from the student to the professor, because I guess it's us professors, who really have to make sure that the students are prepared before they even come for the readiness test or to do any kind of English language or whatever. I mean, the professors need to be really accountable. Right. So that's what my take on that.
Can I add something? So one of the things that we do at the Global Business Week, and Karen is actually our chair for this, is we provide faculty development. And we actually give 4 hours. Now, Global Business Week is 1 week long. It's 5 days, right? And we give faculty training 4 hours. And with that, they get a certificate saying that they participated in faculty training to become X-Culture professors. And then what Karen and I had talked about was eventually, once they become proficient at one level, then, maybe doing like a tier step process of doing a second level and then a third level. And, eventually this could count towards professional development for faculty, for international business professors.
Let me go back to very specific, issues. Like, let's go back to students. So professors, I guess it would be the same thing, because we talked about training professors. And so the question would be, do we want to add any specific training, make it mandatory? But let me give you 3 specific examples that we need to decide on for the next semester for the students. And I honestly don't know. Like, for me, the answer would be yes, because at my university, that graduate course, Culture, is the course. Like that's the only thing they do. It's a regular 3-credit-hour course. And then the undergraduates, now it's a separate 1-credit-hour course. So we can afford to, demand more. But for most of you, I assume Culture is part of the course. And so here are 3 things that we need to decide, what to do with. For example, I did mention that Gordon is preparing a series of training videos. I saw the preview and I love them. I think it will be an extremely valuable resource. No question that it should be available as an option for sure. Those who want to learn more, here are some additional guides. The question is, do we want to make them mandatory as part of the training, or does it have to stay only optional, only for those who want to learn more? Another issue, again, related to Gordon, again, it comes up all the time. He has rich experience at a major consulting company, and I think his expectations are a little bit higher. So he's been pushing me to provide more rigorous instructions and expectations for some of the sections of the report. Like, for example, he developed very strict and detailed instructions for how to write the executive summary. And then, if I remember correctly, it could have been not Gordon, maybe somebody else, but there were a couple of professors who provided very detailed instructions for like how to do the SWOT analysis or how to do the market analysis. And the dilemma there was that at some point it became so rigorous and so in-depth that you'll really it would be a good fit only for the courses where that's part of the course. We really cannot expect all of the students to spend so much time working on those additional things because it's not part of the course. They literally have to almost read an additional textbook in order to understand all those things. So can we really demand them that they write it in a very specific way as if they took a dedicated course on that specific tool? Another thing we are doing now, so we got a little grant some time ago, and hopefully we will be finished this summer. We are writing what we call the Culture Open Textbook. So basically there are 40 professors who are writing separate sections, chapters, and it will become essentially an Culture textbook on international business. Again, would that be available, or should it be available only as an optional reading for those who want to use it, or do we make it a mandatory textbook that students need to read in addition to the textbook that they use in their course already? And so the question becomes here, so do we make all those textbook, video training, additional guidelines, additional tools, additional guides? So do we want to add more of those? Or maybe we don't want to add more of those, or maybe we want to add them, but only as an option. Or some people say already what we have, it's too much. They say the instructions and the expectations for the reports you already imposed, that's already too much. Let's keep it a little bit more open. Let's give them a little bit more freedom and creativity. So where's that balance? Especially with these, with respect to these specific things that we need to decide if we're going to make them mandatory or not. Textbook, a series of videos, training videos, instructions for the specific sections of the report, additional guides on how to use specific market analysis or competition analysis tools. So do we want to push it further or not?
Vas?
Yes.
I just want to respond to that. First of all, excellent point and a very important one. And I just want to share a simple exercise that I share with my executive MBA students to help them decide what activities on their to-do list brings them the most value and which ones they can stop doing. So I guess I'm trying to help our faculty, as Liliani mentioned, the Global Business Week, and then I guess want to make sure that people are, faculty and students are more productive by doing less. So in this exercise, they decide on an area of their life where they'd like to have better results and less stress. So I tell them, okay, write down the tasks you do in that area on one side of the paper. And on the other side of that sheet, you list the successes you've had in that area. So I think, Vas, you mentioned earlier, they're doing a lot during COVID-19, for instance, all the balancing we do with work, parenting, and friendships and more. So what these 2 columns on that page will tell them is, okay, they identify which tasks directly contributed to those successes. Anything that did not directly contribute can be eliminated, greatly reduced, or delegated to someone else. So in our Culture team, it could go to another team member. And that's how they would be more productive by doing less. So we meet Gordon's strong standards. So we're not compromising on standards and watering this down. On the other hand, we ensure that there's quality and relevance to what they're doing. And one last point, instead of just calling this the Culture IB textbook, I think we should aim broader by perhaps maybe looking at leadership in general. And this could be across various functional areas, not just international business, because these projects, I think they do encompass a lot of other areas within the field of business.
Yeah, yeah. But then again, for example, you mentioned an exercise. So the question is, do we want to add exercises like that as part of the training and kind of require that everybody does them or not? Same thing, for example, with the team charter. So we've been back and forth with the team charter because some people believe that it would be a very helpful thing. And our research shows that, yes, it does help. But then others say, well, that's already too much work. And now you want them to write a team charter on top of that. So where is that balance, you know? Like I'm adding all of that in my courses, but again, I can afford it because for us that's a separate course, so that's easy. So I'm definitely going to be using, like, for example, Gordon's videos or that textbook, but I'm not sure if it should be mandatory for everybody. Sorry, Natalia, you were saying.
Yeah, sure. I think that it's great to have all these additional materials, but they should be optional, not mandatory, because if they become mandatory, we're going to lose a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like it comes with a lot of, you know, accountability issues and workload, as we've said. And there are always students who would take initiative and do more because they pursue, like, they have higher standards, pursue bigger goals and everything. And some of those who just want to complete the course. So we cannot sort of make everyone to work the same way as we would want them to work. So I think that it would be better to have all those resources available and to direct students to those resources. But then eventually at the end of the day, it's their responsibility to, you know, take initiative and do it. But there should be definitely a minimum, like, standard of and requirements of what they need to go. Like right now we have this readiness test, and within your courses, everyone covers certain things which are required for being able to successfully complete each Culture chapter within the report.
Vaz, I have a question because I put it on the chat. Have we ever considered, and like I said on the chat, I'm not sure it's a great idea or not, but it makes some sense to me. Have we ever considered tiering out
this
level of participation, so you have an advanced version of X Culture with professors that are...
Anna just talked about that. The challenge I see with that, we do have a question, what kind of team you want to be on, and we can separate people in sort of achievers versus those who just want to get through. But then the question becomes, how do you mix them? Do you keep them separate? In which case we will have an all-star team, but then we will have everybody else. And those everybody else, like if you're complaining about poor English or poor motivation or poor participation, we basically will set up that other half. Like we will remove all those people who can be the leaders and locomotives because they will be in a separate all track, you know. So we'll basically have a track that is very happy and a track that is not happy because those who could have made them happy are now in a separate track. Or do we mix them up like it becomes not such an easy?
I'm not convinced that would happen.
Maybe it won't.
My experience with X Culture is that you have a wide range of goals from the professors, not just the students. A lot of professors just want participation and they want the cross-cultural interaction. I've had my students tell me that some of their teammates, their professors doesn't even grade the report.
Yeah.
So they just want them to participate. And I get that. I don't think that's a bad thing. But it is a bad thing when you've got, let's say, Gordon, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to use you as an example. If you've got a high achieving class and ones that you're spending a lot of time training and saying, I want this to be quality, and they're stuck with kids that are out there where their professor is saying, you know, all I want you to do is get better English from this and some cross-cultural communication.
And that's very true. We have people like that.
Yeah, I know we do. And that creates some conflict because when it comes to the English language thing, I'm torn about that because I certainly want to see as much international participation as possible. But the biggest complaint I get from my students is that they have to edit at the end, but not only do they have to edit, they've got to fix the plagiarism issues. And my hypothesis would be that the lower your English capabilities, the more likely you are to plagiarize, to just get the thing done. And
if we do, if we do this like perfect teams and everything, we will lose the most valuable element of X culture, this reality, you know. You once again will put your students in a perfect environment where they actually won't learn anything. What they need to take out of this X culture, they need to take this like real life experience. They need to understand that when they come to work, they will not, you know, kind of necessarily deal with or work in perfect teams. That will be their reality because of the more and more like formations of international virtual teams. Eventually, they will end up working with this kind of students who will have, with this kind of like employees at this point, who would have like lower language standards, lower like, you know, academic integrity standards, and then everything like this. So one of the most valuable things to learn to work in this like international virtual, you know, experience, this international virtual team dynamics. And we'll lose that, and we'll deprive students of that. And then eventually they will come back to us and complain that, oh, we've done this X Culture internship and it was so good. And then we went and we joined the multinational corporations and the virtual team, and it wasn't at all as what you've taught us.
Well, my answer to that would be then the professors need to be more accountable and and hold their students more accountable and join the advanced version of this.
Because David, I really strongly feel that if a student is plagiarizing somewhere, the professor has told the student it's okay to plagiarize, which is a wrong thing. So it's basically the training that needs to come from the professor to the student. I mean, the first thing which I cover as a part of my X culture thing is don't plagiarize. That's it. You know, it could be cultural or whatever, but don't even look at doing something like this. You need to have the proper citations. You need to have the proper references and all those good stuff. So somewhere as professors, we need to be accountable for the
I agree with you. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, exactly.
But then,
or we might do as in football or in soccer. We might have a Premier League, a second league, and a Champions League.
Well, maybe that won't be right. I don't think so.
Yeah. But
that
you
would
know,
be like
actually,
segregating right there, and I don't think so. That's the right attitude.
Yes, it would be bad actually, but yes, there are some very. Yeah.
Somebody suggested, I think it was Gordon, I see in the comments, that maybe we should have some sort of a mandatory training for the new professors.
Yeah,
and maybe even go back a couple of years, somebody who participated before but showed not very, like whose class was getting low peer evaluations. Maybe they need to go through that mandatory sort of, you know, correction training. And I don't know, I'm not sure if it will solve the problem, but at the very least, people will know how to approach things and will know better what the expectations are.
Yeah,
I would like to contribute one thing. Oh, I'm sorry.
Alejandra, go ahead.
Sorry, as a first-time teacher, yeah, I did a lot of study on the professor's manual. I taught them, I added a class to my course that was cross-cultural communication and team management across cultures. So I tried to build on that, but it was a challenge for me to understand the complete scope of the project up until the final reports were submitted. So when I started grading the reports and I started to have that experience of what companies are looking for, of what everyone is doing, that was when I realized all the things I could have done better. So I do think mandatory training for first-time or second-time teachers, where you try to understand these dynamics and build upon the participation of everyone, could be really valuable. I as well think that one of the most important experiences for my students was the reality of it. As Natalia has said, being able to deal with people that do not necessarily work at the same level as you, that have different motivations, that have different values, and all in the mid of a global pandemic and a global crisis where sometimes students disconnected and then re-entered, and trying to get that motivation going was one of the most valuable experiences. Yeah. Another thing I think we should take into account is that some cultures, by our cultures, we don't like to grade people badly. Yeah. So some of my students will come and say, I have a couple of teammates that are not working, I have this, I have that, and then I will look at the peer evaluations and I will say, okay, but you didn't grade it. Yeah. You didn't reflect that on the tool that X Culture is providing to you. Yeah. So maybe that is another area of opportunity to see how different cultures behave for these type of situations.
Yeah, there is a very wise comment from Gordon in the comments, and that's exactly what I tell my students. So he says in the comments that I tell my students that I apologize for any student who has a great team, because basically I felt them to provide the experience representing the reality. And I tell my students exactly the same thing. I say, well, if you have a great team, I'm sorry, but you know, it's a useless experience for you, but at least you're having fun. And those of you who have a bad team, you still can get an A course, you know, from my course. It's not a problem. It's an exercise. It's not a test. But I don't care if you end the project with, you know, enemies on 6 continents. As long as you experience all of this, that's what counts. And I think if we set the expectations right, the students approach it a whole different, you know, very differently. But going back to, there is a question there somewhere about, you know, a percentage of the course grade and stuff like that. The problem is that predicting these things is extremely difficult. Like, for example, let's take the percent of the course grade. The correlation is a perfect 0. We test it many times. And so if we do require that X-Culture accounts for no less than 20% of the course, except for the cases, we have some exceptional cases where it's not allowed by the university policies, in which case the professor promises that they will still take care of the participation, even if it's not part of the course grade. So we have like 1 or 2 cases that, you know, specifically request, and we make that exception. But we have some where it's literally up to 100% of the course. And the correlation between the peer evaluations or the report quality is a perfect 0, like literally a perfect 0, like 0.001, you know, plus or minus. Same thing with, for example, you know, what predicts peer evaluations in general, personality, readiness test, the correlations are extremely low. So the problem is that many of these things are not very easy to predict, and just because somebody is more fluent in English or less fluent in English, got a higher grade on the readiness test, lower grade, usually that's not a very strong predictor. And as I said, part of the course grade, that's like completely 0 correlation. So we have some professors for whom it may be only 20% and they do a wonderful job. And we may have some professors for whom it's half of the course and the students are still not participating very well, unfortunately. So it's not very easy to predict. So, but it's an important question. So I don't know, it seems to me like training for professors is important. Maybe some sort of like stratification, maybe some promise in that. If you could maybe give it some more thought and then send your recommendations, maybe we can try something this semester. Maybe have like a small subset of all-star teams and then everybody else, or the other way around, maybe have everybody, but then a subset of where they just want to learn English or something, you know, some combination of the two. So I don't know.
I would like to make a suggestion, Vas.
Yes.
How about in the middle of the semester, in the middle of the X-Culture semester, you send out a survey to all the professors, asking them that what is the likelihood, like at the beginning of the semester, you send out a readiness test to all the professors. So in the middle of the semester, maybe send out a survey asking the professors, what is the likelihood that you've got like 20 students or 50 students in your class, how many of them are likely to be successful in this semester, like student-wise? So as soon as I get that survey, I'll be a little more concerned that, hey, now there's some accountability. So I need to go back. If as a professor, I'm a free rider and I'm having a hands-off approach towards X-Culture, I will be forced to look at the performance of each of my students to see how many are doing well, how many are not doing well. So there'll be some sort of an accountability on the professor's side.
Kind of use some psychology here. Yeah.
There is
that's a good
one more item which I would like to
relay an
bring
experience. So the first 2 times I did X-Culture, I had a lot of students complaining and about, you know, the teams and that stuff. I still get a bit of that. This past semester, I actually told them at the beginning, this is what to expect.
Yes.
And I went through the full list. I didn't have much complaints. They just got on with it. They knew. They would kid with me about, yeah, I got a good team, sorry, or, you know, they complain at the very end that they had to do a bit more of the extra work, you know, and this may be some self-serving bias, although I think for Singaporeans, they go overboard. I would say the noise level went way down by letting them know what to expect in advance. I told them some sort of mediating techniques to try to identify who are going to be the free riders, give them some little tests at the beginning. When you identify your free rider, let them do all the logistics, you know, so a range of stuff. But when they have a sense that you're aware of the problems that they're going to have and you give them some advance notice, it seems to help them. That they feel it isn't just them and their team. This is a natural occurrence.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think when you set the guidelines right in the beginning as a professor, that this is what needs to be done and this is how it will be approached and week by week schedule and everything, it becomes easier. Again, I'm coming back to the same question that I threw to the group initially. This is easier in an offline world. In the world where I'm seeing my students every day, there's a control setting. There's a lot of peer pressure. You see some groups doing a better job than the other groups. Some students are better prepared than the others. So it also brings everyone together and understand that X culture is important for them. Now, talking about an online world where you do not have 100% attendance, some of the students may not even be attending it. And then in that world, now I'm thinking more, if I'm trying to implement all these rules and policies and guidelines with the global pandemic going on, we have, the students have some other concerns as well. I'm not sure how to implement these policies now. And that's my bigger concern at the moment. I know I have my, the well-thought-out plan is there. There's a schedule that I'll be following. I'll make sure that the students will follow that. And maybe my standards will be high enough. But will I be able to implement those standards in an online world where things have changed now? So that's the question. I mean, if you have any experience with that, or if you have seen it especially for the professors who took X culture at the time when things closed down, what was your experience? How did you manage it?
Can I suggest, since we have a few more questions, important questions that we need to discuss, and each of these can take at least an hour of discussion, since we sort of identified the issue and some discussion, can I suggest that we move on, but please do provide additional comments on each of these questions, and we'll consolidate and share those comments later on. So I think just in the interest of going through all of the issues so that we can comment on them, some now, but then some later. Would that be okay? Because there are a few other very important issues that I want to cover, and we already at an hour. And so another question, and I hope I will be able to explain it, but for those of you who don't know, so we spent this semester going through some exercises with trying to sort of do some strategic planning for X culture for the future. The whole exercise was prompted by the invitation from Gordon from Singapore. He's teaching a course on design thinking there. And so X culture was essentially a client of his course, just like we have clients in X culture. So we were a client for this design thinking course. So there were about 40, 50 students. And so we had 3 tracks, and we asked for their help with the process management. So how do we make the process more efficient? Revenue and financials. Revenue in terms of raising money, and financials, how to process the payments and stuff like that. And so some interesting stuff came out of that. Many interesting problems or many issues were identified that we didn't really think much about. But one important thing that came out or made it more salient was that at this time, X culture is managed as essentially a network. So we have a bunch of professors who, like you, invest some time, and so we rely essentially on volunteer work. We do have some help from students, graduate students, assistants, although again, sometimes they're not very helpful because it takes time to learn how to do things. And so while we may have some hours available from the students assigned to us and from professors willing to provide a few hours here and there, but much of the work requires, professional approach. People who are fully immersed in the organization know exactly where things are, how to do them. So in any case, to do it right and to do it, to make it sustainable in the long term, it seems like we need to professionalize it a little bit more, meaning that we need to probably hire some professional managers to manage it well. At this time, it's taken a lot of my time, and we have a bunch of other professors who spend a lot of time, and we are happy to keep it doing this way for a while, but at some point we'll have to hire additional help. And so all of that boils down to, do we have the money to hire help or not? With the current revenue model, we basically break even. So over time, I've been able to, over time, I've been able to accumulate some funds. So we have some money in our account for emergencies, but we don't really make enough to hire professional help. So as I said, we hired Julia to replace Simone. Simone was an assistant provided by my school. But the problem was that before Simone, everybody I had was with me only for 1 or 2 years. And that was not very helpful because it takes like at least 1 semester before they become helpful. And then once they know what to do, they graduate, and I have to go through this again. Simone luckily was available for me longer because I had some grant money and I could keep him on my own sort of, from my own account. But now he left as well, and I couldn't even get someone for the semester so that he can train a new person. And I thought, you know what, I'm done with using students. Let's hire someone, you know, who will manage it on a permanent basis. So that's how we got Julia. But again, we have to pay for her work, and we do have enough to pay her. But again, we probably need a little bit more help. And so the question becomes, where do we get more money? And so there are apparently two potential sources of revenue that we're considering. One is raising the fees for the universities, and two, making it not free for organizations, for companies. The second one, I think it should be, companies should pay. The only problem is we haven't been very successful so far making them pay. And so I'm trying again new things, like for example, the last client we were talking to, a bank from Ukraine that has enough money to pay. I specifically invited Leilani to join me for that meeting so that I can focus on the academic side and she can talk more about the money, because I'm definitely not doing a very good job. Peter Magnuson has been helping with that as well. So he's been negotiating with a few clients in the past. And if we have any new ones, maybe I'll involve him as well. So this time Leilani was just available right before the meeting. So we added her essentially last minute. So we'll see if we will be able to do it. And my hope is that maybe we'll have fewer companies, but if each of them pays, I don't know, $5,000, and we have 5 companies, that should give some money to be able to hire some serious professional help. But so with the companies, the question I will have for you is, do you know any companies that might be interested in participating and willing to pay? And that's a whole different issue. But going back to the university, so we had a big meeting a few days ago based on that Singapore course. And so Gordon, Leilani, Tim, Karen seem to be of the opinion that it would be not only justified, but also necessary to raise the fees. My worry, obviously, is that not every university is able to pay, no matter how much. Some just simply not able to pay. They don't have a budget for that, or they're not even allowed to send money overseas because of the banking regulations. Second, we have some universities that for sure can pay much more. Like many universities can easily pay $1,000 and maybe even more. So for them, that's not a problem. But then we have some for whom even $250 is a lot of money. And then at this time, as you know, we have a $250 fee, but we allow the professors to request a waiver, partial waiver and pay only $100, or full waiver and pay $0. Now, in the last meeting, everybody was in the agreement, not except for me. I'm also in an agreement, but I have some doubts as to whether or not it will work. But everybody was basically saying, let's make it $1,000 per semester per university, and then make it optional to reduce that amount to, let's say, $250 or to $0 if the school cannot pay. I'm thinking 1,000, let's say if an average class size is, let's say 30, 40 students, $1,000, that's like $40, $50 per student. So that's probably a little too much. But then again, would $500 be justified, $750, a whole 1,000? Should it stay at $250? I don't know. We even have some cases, like for example, very rich schools in the United States that refuse to pay because they say it's not a conference, we don't have a budget for that. And I still allow them to participate at one single school because the professor there is very, very active and helps in many other ways. So I'm still fine with that. But then again, what do we do with that? Another issue, again, related, just in full disclosure. So this semester we had something like 150 or 160 universities. Of those, about half said that we cannot pay. And we said, okay, you don't have to pay, we'll give you a stipend. Then the other half said we can pay. And of those, several said we can only pay $100 because I'm paying out of my own pocket and it's, all I can afford. But then others said we will pay. And still as of now, we still have some universities that still didn't pay. So we're still only at about 60%, I believe 65% that, of the promised amount that we collected. And I know some of that will come a little bit later because, in some schools that by the time the bookkeeping processes everything, sometimes it may be literally months, but I'm guessing that many will not pay. And so I'm not sure what to do with this. So when it comes to universities paying, the only thing that I will not...
Can I say something here?
Yeah, go ahead, please. Yes.
Can I be a bit more explicit here?
Yeah.
So we have a segment of that participates in X Culture that are richer universities, first world universities. We shouldn't drain the pool down to the bottom level to all of those that can't afford it. So we have a segment up there that can afford it. $1,000, you pay $5 for every HBR article. When you think about the amount of effort, time, that's involved in this, I'd be happy to pay $100 per student. But we'll probably be talking somewhere, as you said, between $10 and $50. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have that segment, the more wealthy university segment. In between, you have, at the bottom end, you have those that can't afford, and in between are those that whine. There will be people that I just, don't want to put in the effort to get the stipend or the money to pay for it, and they just need to be managed, and you'll get a percentage of those. I think $250 is like pocket change for an American university, Hong Kong, Singapore, many of the Europeans. Yeah, for some of those in Africa and maybe Eastern Europe, it may be more challenging, but I think we've been just too kind. Now, you may challenge me on that, but it's sort of, and the one that's paying the price is Vass and his team. So everyone has been underpaying so that Vass can work harder.
Well, but also a related issue, for example, Peter Magnuson brought it up, and it's a very valid concern. So he was saying, and we even sort of tried, but it was almost too late to try it this semester, so maybe we'll try it next semester. So Peter said that it's just difficult to find a way to pay for it because it's not something that is, again, part of the normal expense. But he said, I don't mind if you make it $10, $20, $30, $40 per student, and I can make my students pay. They already pay for simulations.
I think it's a great idea. It's
well,
a great idea.
The only problem with
I
that
have
is,
the same concern, because my university, they said, okay, fine, we have funds, and then they'll give you, but the next year they may not. So I think we have the students pay for that. That'll be perfect.
The only problem there again
may I
is,
say something?
Just one quick clarification, and then we'll open it. The only concern with letting students pay or making students pay is that logistically it may be not as easy. Keeping track of who paid, who
Can we
didn't.
not have a tab on the website on X Culture where every student can before becoming a part has to pay, just like they're paying for the book or a simulation. Like my students do a student simulation every year for my marketing research class, so they have to do that anyways. So
what I mean is that for the United States, it shouldn't be a problem because everybody has a credit card, so it's a relatively simple proposition. But we have some countries where just making the payment will require so much support that it may be almost not worth it. So if we do it, it may be a good idea just to limit it only to the United States, for example, or maybe a few other countries.
That's suggested in the design thinking course. So if we have that problem, we'll find a solution.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. But I don't know. I mean, if you think we should try it, maybe we should try it in the fall. But, please share your thoughts in general. Format, amounts.
May I, real quick?
Oh, sorry, Sandra, go ahead.
Sandra, go ahead, please.
It's quick. So I teach at a liberal arts college. I may have anything between 5 to 20 students. So I'm paying $250 out of my own professional development money because I can't foresee how many students I have. I'm not sure, maybe you can tell me how a class with 300 students will be just as, will require just as much work as a class like mine with 5 students this semester. But that's another conversation. What my school, we have talked about, if we raise it to 1,000, there's no way that I can afford that. But they've wanted to include it into the tuition, because when you include it into the tuition, so make it per student. So if we have $20 per student, we're talking $80,000, right? Not 250 times whatever many schools we have, which is a lot less. So you increase your revenue, and you also make it a lot more fair for schools who have 300 students per class versus 5 or 6 or 10 even. I mean, we top our classes at 20 students, and that's rare for us to have that many students. So when you do that, when you include it in the tuition, they're already paying for out of their loan or out of their scholarships. They don't even see that. So then, of course, we pay for it, and our business office would pay for it, or the professor would pay for it, but the students don't even see it. It's part of the fee. So that's what it is to take the international business class or the international marketing class. So I think that would be a win-win situation, because you'd make it fair for our students and you'd raise your revenue and be able to, because I agree, you need support, and especially to grow or scale up this operation. So
that's a good
point. I would suggest a totally different approach from the psychology viewpoint. When we ask students to pay even, say, $10 for participation, they have a skin in the game. and they will be much more willing and interested in making this work for them, rather than when it comes free from the professor or from the university funds or from some other sources which they don't care about. I found in my classes, and I use experiential learning for many years, including many business simulations in which students have to pay, and they pay not an exorbitant amount of money, say $30 to $40, $45 at max, for the participation. But this means that they are responsible for this. They have to do this before they are approved for the team, before they are approved for the work on the project. And they understand that because they paid for this, they need to gain something from this. If this is free lunch, then no one enjoys it as much as something for which they paid. And for this purpose, this is a kind of the psychological hook who possibly, I want to be cautious, possibly will make them more engaged in the process compared to free lunch, which they have now.
I think those are excellent points, Greg. And I would also add, I mean, I think providing different payment solutions for different cultures, different countries, different situations is kind of an opportunity to practice what we teach and show that we can be like culturally flexible and create customized solutions to different markets.
So Peter, since it was...
Let me say something first.
Oh, go ahead, Tim. Go ahead, Tim, please.
I've been boss for like 9 years of this. What's going to happen is any question that comes up, any student that doesn't pay, it's all going to go back to VOS to work on. So I'm fine with whatever method you want, as long as somebody other than VOS volunteers to coordinate this as we put it in place. And that's where we separate it, because all of us will have our opinion, we'll walk away, and poor VOS is going to try something in the fall and get a zillion questions.
Well, and that's why, as I said, you know, I don't want to make it per student for everybody, but tell me though, so if we did offer the option, you know, when the professor is applying, when the question comes to payment, it says, you know, $250 or whatever the amount is per university, or would you like instead to go with each student paying individually, and then let's say it's $15 per student, maybe with the rule that it's no fewer than 10 students or something like that to make it, you know, and then, so Peter, would that work for you if you click, you know, per student? And then we just basically, you know, send you the link, or, you know, it will be right there, and then you just distribute it to the students so that they go and pay online. Would that be a sort of, and then test?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think basically the process now is I submit the names, right?
Yeah.
And then you send the welcome letter.
Yeah.
But there would just be a step in between. I submit the names, you send them an invoice. Once the invoice has been paid, or like they've made the online payment, then they get the welcome letter.
And it could be actually part of the welcome letter. So the welcome letter says it's part of the course. You need to do the training. You need to pay, let's say, $15. And here is the deadline for both things. So you need to do it by March 1st. And then otherwise you will not be placed on the team. So I suppose we should be able to track it that way. My worry is...
I mean, don't take more work.
My worry is, as Tim said...
Do it.
Yeah, my worry is that there will be some students who will say my credit card didn't work, or something, you know, didn't go through, or some students will use, you know, parents' credit card and the name will be different. And then it will be for us a lot of hassle to match who paid and who didn't. So there will be a few cases like what we have with the Culture
There'll be a lot of
Symposium.
cases.
Yeah.
Peter,
When we
what
talk
if you
about
include in the tuition? I'm sorry. What if you?
I was just saying one thing. I was just saying that I think we should go ahead with this particular strategy because we'll get paid. I mean, right now, the main thing is we want money for X Culture, right? I know it'll be a lot of work for VAS, and we all can get involved. We all can pitch in. But right now, what's happening, at least from my university, I could see the resentment on their faces every time I approach them for $150. I know, I mean, if I take it like $1,000 for 1 or 2 years, they'll be okay with that. But if I say, no, it's $250 for this semester, and by the way, I also will come back in the next semester for $250, it's sort of, you know, it doesn't seem professional. So if we have to make it professional, I think we should have a competitive pricing. Why $15 per student? Why not make it $20, $30 per student? Because I know our students are spending money for their books. And X Culture is a part of an IB course curriculum, right? It's sort of a full-fledged experience where we have books, we have videos, we have lectures, we have, the student actually going into their experiential learning. So I think we can charge them more depending on, we can always set the pricing and make more money for X-Culture. Right now, X-Culture is losing money because of people like me, and I'll take the blame for that, because I know when I go to my dean, they say, hey, go to this step, that step, and sometimes I get frustrated and I say, okay, let me just talk to Vas and maybe I'll ask him to make it next semester, because I know Vas is a great friend, but that's not helping. It's not helping X-Culture at all. So I would say doing this where we have charging the student per student basis, I think that's where we'll make money for X-Culture. So I think I'm 100% with Peter and with everyone else who thinks that the students should be charged money, because I think that will give us revenue and that will make students more accountable. Having the skin in the game, as one professor mentioned here, I think that's correct. I mean, that's where they'll say, yes, we have stake in it. And they'll value X-Culture more than anything, and we'll get the money. So I think
the more important question, I'm sorry to stop and jump over you. The more important question is, if Voss went away tomorrow, would we have X-Culture? Because every option here is putting more work on him, which is exactly the opposite of what we're trying to do.
Well, the good news of that, for that is that we
Don't
do have
be nice,
several.
Voss. Don't be nice. You'll be working 2 hours.
But what I mean is that we are actively working to make sure that it's not tied to one person. So we now have several people who are very actively involved, including you, Tim, including Karen, including Julia, including Leilani. So many things are now becoming sort of basically, I'm trying to distance myself as much as possible. And especially now my hope is with Julia, with Volodymyr, with the IT guys, they have all of the templates, they know where things are. So I think it's almost there. So maybe another year and we should be close enough. My worry again is that if we kind of, try to make payments at the student level, my worry is that the logistics of tracking those payments, dealing with the questions, technical issues, maybe even refunds if somebody drops the course and wants a refund. Even if we say that we not issue the refunds, again, still it may be ethically not easy to do. Let's try and maybe see how much work that will create, because it may be potentially a little too much.
Well, Vas, in order to reduce the burden on Vas for the payment stuff, maybe the professors should get the information about my students, how many have paid, how many payments are pending, so that I can follow up with my students rather than Vas sending individual emails to students saying that, hey, you've not paid up.
Yeah, maybe we'll see how we can automate that more, and maybe even, as I said, do it at some way, at the professor level.
Can I just say something real quick about tier pricing as well? Because I think the individual price allows for more flexibility. Like Peter and Shu said, I think that students who can pay themselves, they can do it. And Gregory said that's going to raise the accountability, right? For me, I would include it in the tuition. I would pay you according to the number of students that I have in the class, because they already paid, right? So it would come from one person. For someone like I read here in the comments from someone who's in an emerging market country, for instance, there can be a tier pricing, right? Yeah. So it doesn't have to be $20 or $25 per student, or that can be, if you are in an emerging market, it can be $10 per student, right? Or $5. It depends. So it allows for a lot more flexibility. And one last point, this can be so automated that it will, in fact, probably decrease the amount of work.
Maybe possibly, yeah.
Raise additional revenue so you can hire somebody to actually deal with that as well.
Okay. And
just
Chandra,
want to
I agree with
remind
Andrew.
I just want to remind one thing to everyone, that international money transfers are not free. So the students would end up with at least $15 flat fee for every money transfer. Yeah. So for some of them, it would be double.
That's exactly the case. Yeah, $16.
Fast. We looked at this in design thinking. The banks, we had HSBC and Citi and all them. We can use Stripe. We can use a variety of mechanisms.
Just PayPal.
It will take some effort to put them in place. If we want to just keep doing the way we've done it all the time, yes, it will cost more.
Look, I use the CSUM global simulation. Some of you may use it too. They went through the same type of growth issues when I started with them 15 years ago. And at first you had to pay through PayPal, and then they had to email you a code and all of this. And it was kind of a nightmare, but they figured it out. I don't see why we can't, in the sense that now it's all automated, and the minute you pay, you get a code, you get access, it's automated. That's number one. Number two, I think Vaz, I think there needs to be multiple revenue streams here. And if you want to call it tiered or whatever, but personally, it may sound crazy, but I think that professors should all pay. You're going to test the elasticity of demand for this thing a little bit, but professors should pay, and you can have tiered payments based on where they are, et cetera. You could even waive some for participation regions and to keep it cross-culturally balanced. But I don't mind. I pay $250 out of my own pocket. I think I put in the survey I'd be willing to pay up to maybe $500 a year. And you could have, let's say, a university could pay a $500 flat fee for the professor and the students. Or the professor could pay $100 and go with a student-based $10 or $15 fee per student that's paid through PayPal. And then the last thing I want to say is because I said it in a survey later, I do think you ought to consider having some form of social media marketing platform that you can build, because you've got 80,000 people out there that have done this. If they're followers of X Culture, you can sell advertising on that as an influencer, and that'll be a consistent revenue stream that just comes through putting advertising in some of the videos. You can promote companies that way. You can tell the companies they get all of this exposure, et cetera.
Well,
right?
one of the other models that we considered was some sort of more like a sponsorship from university model, where the university pays, let's say, $1,000 a year or maybe even more. But for that, first of all, they get unlimited participation. So essentially, you pay once per year, and then all your students, all your professors participate. But then maybe also it comes with some additional benefits, such as perhaps, as you said, maybe, university logo is on our webpage. Maybe we do some additional recruitment for them for the programs. So maybe it will be a little bit more than just simply students participating. And so this way, professors don't have to go to the, supervisors every semester. It would be some sort of like a more university level payment, either one time for a few years or some other format. But again, the details are not quite clear yet. So we need to think about that and maybe even try it. Maybe it will not work.
I do think that we underestimate the influencer capability of the X Culture organization via social media and other aspects.
Well, that part, again, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like a good idea, but once you get into it, it turns out that it's not as simple. Again, it's all in the details, and we need to think about that a little bit more, because like if I just simply put somebody's ad on our website, I don't know. I mean, we never tried, but I'm not sure how much influence it would have. Same thing, we have like 250,000 followers on the Facebook, but Facebook decides how many people see our posts. And we've had some posts that were shown to 10 million people. So apparently people started sharing it. But we have some posts, or most posts would be shown to like 1,000 people only. And I don't know how Facebook decides.
Yeah, but if you were on YouTube and 10 million people saw it, you would have received several thousand dollars in revenue.
On YouTube, we usually get hundreds to maybe a few thousand views for the videos that we post, even though we have like 5,000 followers. So it's not as simple as just clicking. So that will require a lot of work, and I honestly don't really know how to do it. We've been experimenting a lot with the X Culture Kids, trying to advertise it online, and one thing I learned is it's not easy. I mean, it's much more complicated. And yeah, but in any case, what I would like to ask you again, so lots of interesting ideas related to payments, from the amounts to the structure of payment, to the system, to the tiers, to the sponsorship. I would really, really want your input. If you can maybe give it some thought and then send your suggestions. We will definitely try some of those ideas in the fall, and we have enough time to test, to prepare. So we definitely, like, for example, Peter's idea to maybe allowing the option for the students to pay. Yes, I think we definitely should try it and see what happens. If it turns out to be too much work or nobody wants it, we will not use it. But if it turns out to be a good option, maybe we'll transfer it to completely. But also tell me, how much you think it should be, what else we should try. Definitely, all ideas are most welcome, because we don't really know. There is
I think we should go multimodal on this one. So you have the universities. If some people are willing to go to the university route, welcome. But if some of them wants to have the students involved and do it on a per student basis, then I think that option should be available too.
Yeah, we definitely want to give that as an option and then see and multiple options at the same time. Maybe again over time one specific option will emerge as a winner and we'll just drop all the other ones. But it seems like we should at the very least add one more, pay as a student, and maybe two, pay as a university sponsor. But again, we need to work out the amounts and the totals and the tiers and the how they would be assigned to tiers. So that's a very important issue too. Another question, a whole different one, but I would like to invite your ideas and maybe quick discussion, but maybe more later. We have a lot of interest and almost demand, I would say, for the X-Culture Alumni Association. So we have a lot of students asking if there is one. We did try a few years ago to start one, and many students, like literally thousands, applied and said, yes, I would like to be a member. One thing we could not figure out is what the association will do. And I honestly did very extensive research. I went to the websites of the alumni associations of many universities, of some professional associations, companies. And my impression is that they don't do anything. Like Harvard, Stanford, like what they do is they ask you for donations all the time. They occasionally would organize some sort of like a webinar, but almost nobody shows up to those webinars. Like it would be a very small number of people, like in double digits, like 50, 60 people. So it's definitely like a small percentage of the total alumni network. They would have like alumni, like best teacher awards. So they have some budget. But again, my understanding is that it would be like a few people in some sort of a selection committee who decides who gets the award. And while all alumni sort of feel part of it, but in reality, most of them don't even know that it's being done or don't even know who's being selected. And so like, it seems like it's very hard to find, things to offer people as a kind of value proposition for being a member of this association. So, we thought about things like maybe, providing some sort of free access to some webinars, but it's, probably not very valuable to many people. Many people say, access to the network, but then again, we cannot give everybody's email address because you understand that will lead to all kinds of problems. But when we tried to offer, for example, a discussion board a couple of years ago, nobody came. And again, that's the same thing. I took a look at a bunch of discussion boards of other alumni associations. Nobody talks there. Like some people sometimes ask a question and get like a couple of responses, but it's extremely slow. So nothing like, you would see like discussions on Facebook sometimes in some groups. And so on the one hand, we want to offer this. Ideally, we want to have a membership fee. Ideally, we want to offer a lot of value for that membership fee. Like if people pay, let's say, $50 a year to be a member of the Alumni Association, they get a lot in exchange. But we just don't really know what that value proposition would be. And so what is your thought on that? So if we did create an alumni association and let's say 5,000 people or 10,000 people became members, maybe even paying members, what can we offer them for that membership that they would value and come back year and year, after year? Any thoughts on that? Because everybody loves the idea, but as I said, once you get in those little details, like, so what do we do now? Like,
Vas, could we put that as a question to the stakeholders? What would be of value to them? And then at our next, whenever we get those responses, I think we could discuss what's feasible.
Well, we kind of did it, as I said, in 2016 or 17, we tried to do it. And as I said, many people responded and we had a lot of discussions among the coaches, like hundreds of them, but also students. And everybody keeps talking about the same things. They say, like, for example, network, access to the network. The problem is that, as I said, it's not one of those things, build it and they will come. You provide the discussion board, but people, like maybe first few days, they kind of, find it interesting. So they post something, but it doesn't become very lively. They say, okay, maybe some, as I said, free webinar access and stuff, but people don't show up even when it's free as it is. So I don't know. I mean, it just doesn't seem to be as popular as many people think it should be. They said discounted rate for the symposium, but then again, people will then just become members right before the symposium just to get the discounted rate. Like, nothing good came out of it when we tried that question before. So I'm not sure if it will be better this time, but most people keep telling us the same old ideas that didn't work.
I think, Vas, you raised a good point, but this time this would be a survey with a difference where we actually, with the question, we list what didn't work.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, maybe give them.
So I think this would force them to think a little deeply about what we are asking. and in a diplomatic way, which I think, Vas, you're the best diplomat I know in this group. Well, but wait, I'm not pushing the workload on you. I'm just saying, in a diplomatic way, we asked that question so they could reflect and give us that, because it's hard to guess what value they might ask, and sometimes.
Can I take a guess? I think a lot of them may be looking for a place, of course, to network and for career advancement. At the end of the day, that's what they're at school for. That's why they do X-Culture. They're looking to get skills in order to find connections and to be able to find a job, whether that is in IB, which is in my case. So is there any way to have two clients, two stakeholders? So we have also organizations who are members who are looking for employees, who are looking for skilled workers who have that kind of a training that X-Culture provided to our students. So I think when we do that, we connect the two together, and it becomes then a platform for them to network and also to find each other.
Yeah. Aricia, your microphone is muted, but Sandra, yeah, as a higher level goal, that's obvious. Yes, that's exactly. But what specific activities would that be? Like, are we trying then to do what LinkedIn does, but then people?
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking I mean, like a hybrid of LinkedIn, that the students are looking for some way to connect with each other after they're finished with university. And it's like, maybe I'm thinking of moving to Singapore, or I'm thinking there might be a job over there, but how do I connect with someone who, they may not have been on my team, but they've had the X-Culture experience, and therefore we have something in common, and I can connect with them to get
that's a tough one. We have, for example, the X-Culture group after each symposium, and so students are so excited at those meetings. If you've gone to any of them, you know, they love each other. There are a lot of, like, you know, tears when they're going home, you know, hugging and, you know, forever ever staying together. We will be partners, we will be talking. And so there is a lot of discussion on those groups before the event, but then after the event, like once maybe a month, somebody posts something, maybe gets one response, and then basically, you know, and apparently the reason for that is because there are dedicated platforms for those kinds of things, like LinkedIn, like, you know, you know, definitely worthwhile trying, but I'm a little cautious again about the details, like how exactly it would work, and will it exactly, you know, be valuable enough so people come to us in addition to whatever other things they do.
So maybe we can be a subgroup on LinkedIn, or, you know, something
like a group on LinkedIn instead of our own. So that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, Vaz, that goes back to the social media marketing. Honestly, I think if you can justify it to your university or someone else can, you need a grad assistant that takes process ownership of social media marketing, that actively posts things. Because you're right, if it's inactive, there is no follower engagement.
Again, building audience. I mean, how many times, you cannot believe it, like at least 100 times students come to me and say, I'm going to manage your social media every single time. Like, it's hard work. So I was able to take it to about 250,000 followers, and I post, you know, pretty much 99.9%. But what I mean is it takes a lot of work, and people think, oh, you have the followers, I'll come and I'll do it for you. Every single time they post like 3, 4, 5 things, they get like, you know, like 5 likes, and they lose interest. And the reason is,
someone, you know, Leilani came to mind. I know she does a lot of things, but I know her well, and you do too. She'd be really good at something like that.
Well, she has access to the social media, so we have a bunch of people. What I mean is, it's much harder than it appears at the first glance, and so many people, you know, offered help with the social media, and every single time, once they realize how difficult it is to get, you know, an enthusiastic response, you know, they think,
you need to monetize it.
And especially monetizing, that's even harder. So you post something on Facebook, people like it. So how do you monetize it? Like, and then you post something that you potentially can get money for, and Facebook shows it like to 500 people, and you get 1 like. And it does it every time. Like, they are very smart. They detect right away things that actually can bring you money, and they suppress it right away. So they want you to pay for promotion, but But in any case, what I mean here is that we seem to have a huge opportunity here because we have a lot of interest among the students. As I said last time, a few years ago when we tried it, we sent the invitation and thousands of people signed up. And then the problem was like, so what do we offer them now? And so I'm trying to, we're trying to do it again now, but the problem is we don't really know what would be the value proposition. So any ideas, related to career development, I think that's where, a lot of potential is, maybe some sort of networking, but maybe also some activities like, I don't know, like book club maybe, or maybe some webinars, or maybe some, I don't know, guest speakers or something, I don't know. But as long as we have enough on the list.
I do think that human resources as a process is changing completely. And I just getting this out there, a good opportunity could be to launch within this membership mini challenges, not necessarily a huge project, not a research project that is academic or linked to a classwork. But for example, a lot of companies that are global, that are looking for global talent, that are looking for talent that have a global ability to relate with other cultures, to have this kind of experience, and they could have a type of assessment center through their membership. So you will have the company paying a fee to launch this type of challenge, and then you will have the students or recent graduates paying a smaller fee for the membership to be able to contest or to compete for these prizes. And the prize can be as easy as we will have your CV, or we will look towards an opportunity for you. I know that a lot of companies have offices all around the world, so it could be factible for them. It can be just a month internship or a project participation for the companies, and that can help you monetize it and give the value to the students that we agree are looking towards job opportunities and work opportunities.
And this may actually be a whole separate branch. It doesn't even have to be part of the alumni association. So the alumni could be the sort of the people who come here, but it can almost become like almost like a whole separate company on and of itself.
Was, until now I was very reserved because I have had any other duty. But I have a comment which is very interesting. I am from Eastern Europe. I am from Budapest. And I met yesterday with some IT companies. And the IT company today need totally different approaches. And I outlined for them our particular project-based international approaches. And it would be very nice if you can send us a very good summary about it. What can we do as in-company thing for companies, and maybe it is also another way, regarding your approach.
Again, and maybe if you have a specific company in mind that wants to try it, if you can connect us, we can definitely explore that.
Okay, I will do it.
Anyway, it's been 2 hours, and I think I covered more or less most of my questions. The other ones are less important. I'm not sure if anybody has any other issues to raise, maybe comments or questions. And as I said, I will be sending a follow-up survey so that you could provide more detailed input on each of those issues that we discussed in detail. But any other comments, suggestions, questions that we need to?
Thank you, Vas.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here.
Opportunity.
All 2 hours. So thank you.
And see you all on the 29th.
Yeah. So next weekend, hopefully, you'll be able to join us for the symposium. So
thanks, Vas.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I have a quick question about